Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, of course, Frank Zaberick. And as that great game show host, Steve Harvey, always says, we got another good one for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have as my guest, well, my guest is Steve Grohman, along with his wife, Dana, for the first time. And I've had Steve on like 3 times before. He's basically an evangelist, a creationism evangelist that travels the country and talks about, teaches people about, dinosaurs, how old the earth is, that type of stuff, Noah's Ark, and all kinds of good stuff like that. But today we're going to make a little switch. A lot of times in churches, I mean, especially I belong to a smaller church before the one I'm with now. And the pastor would always say, just to get kind of all the parishioners involved, does anybody have a testimony for you? I'd love to hear a testimony that somebody likes to share with all of us. And long story short, I can't think of a better testimony than the one I heard last year that my guest Steve Grohman shared with the parish at Sanctuary Pentecostal Church in Hudson. And I guess 2 years ago, Steve had an experience with a benign brain tumor, which just from the sound of it, it sounds like a serious thing, and it was. There's a lot of ordeals, and there was a lot of God working in his life all through the experience. I guess you're not like 100% cured, so to speak. There's still some like remnants that you have to take physical therapy for and stuff like that. But without any further ado, first of all, before we have you give a testimony though, Dana, now you're involved with the Seminar Creation Ministry almost as much as Steve is. You've written like 3 or 4 books on the subject of creationism, haven't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've written a children's devotional.
All right.
And then 3 travel books because we've traveled full time for over 30 years.
Wow. Oh, so you've been doing this now for about 30 years.
Yes, sir.
Going around the country to, well, I know the Grohmans live in the San Antonio area of Texas. They have a summer camp in northern New Hampshire, and they travel a whole mess of the country.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Wow. So what like, are you in San Antonio or Texas a certain time of year or a couple months a year?
We spend the holiday time
holidays.
in Texas.
Oh, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah, but mainly around the Houston area.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes San Antonio, but mainly
Now,
Houston.
also, you two have kids, right?
One son.
And how young is he?
He's 30. His whole life was on the road.
Wow.
You know what he tells people, Frank?
What's that?
He says, if it's a brown sign, I've been there.
National parks.
When you drive down the highway, when you see like the green signs or the blue signs, but if you see a brown sign, that's somewhere historic, interesting, and exciting, he's been there. That's what he says. He hasn't been to all of them, but we've been to many, many.
So without any further ado now, this happened 2 years ago. You were in a situation. How did you know there was something wrong with your head or your body? This happened in 2022?
Well, yes. The biggest problem was I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. When you stand up or I stand up, normally, when anybody stands up, their body is perpendicular to the ground. But all of a sudden, whenever there's any little bit of an angle on the ground, like a ramp or just a low spot in the ground, a pothole, my body would want to fall perpendicular to that angle of that slope. and I would start to fall. And I couldn't catch myself, and I kept falling. And my wife was always, she was criticizing me all the time. Steve Grohman, why can't you stay vertical? Because I'm always on the ground. And there were just some other things that were leading up to having some curiosities, because I took a few really hard falls. And my neck was getting stiff, and I thought maybe I need a chiropractor. So I started going to one. And he worked on me a little bit, and he said, I've done all I can. I've done all I can do. He said, I think you should get an MRI. And immediately, right after that, we left there and went and got an MRI. And he actually told us later on, this is a call that no doctor wants to make, but Steve's got a very large, he was talking to Dana, Steve's got a very large brain tumor, and you need a neurosurgeon. Don't have one of those in my back pocket. Didn't know what to do.
Wow.
But the whole thing, God had his hand in the whole way through. We were in Tyler, Texas, was our final meeting that year. And
but that was January.
that was January.
Which is sad for the final meeting
Yeah.
of the year
Yeah.
being in January, when you're
January.
starting.
But I was at that meeting, and we know the pastor and his family well. We've known him for years. And I took several falls there, and one really nasty one in front of his wife and kids, and it was weird, me trying to recover from not tripping, but stumbling and falling and whatever, and then eventually hitting the ground. And that pastor looked at me and said, Steve, something's wrong with you. He said, man, I'll put you up in a campground 2 days, 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 years, whatever it takes. You got to find out what's wrong. And I had been going to the chiropractor already in that same time frame.
And all this, just out of curiosity, like you never take like alcohol recreationally or anything like that?
No, there was no, but that's what Dana would say. She said, when I was driving, she would say, you better hope you don't get pulled over, because, I could not, I looked drunk. When I would stumble and start to fall, it was like this crazy drunk looking, staggering, trying to recoup. I had no coordination. It was weird. It was really weird.
Frank, you have to realize we're hikers.
Yeah,
we're rock climbers, technical rock climbers.
This is not
We've
normal.
hiked over 10,000 miles, and now Steve can't stand vertical. He can't stay up. So obviously there's something crazy going on.
Okay, so you had this pastor in Tyler, Texas, told you got to do something, see a neurosurgeon, and when they
the
told
chiropractor told us that.
Oh, the chiropractor.
While we're at Tyler.
Okay, so then at some point you went to see a neurosurgeon.
Well, that's an interesting statement too, or interesting fact, because I don't know any neurosurgeons.
Yeah.
So I just did a generic search in the Texas region, because that's where we were. And this one guy came up and looked good as far as online, what best you can get. And I called him, made an appointment. And later at that same church, because we did take him up on the campground idea, and we did move into a campground right there in Tyler. And this lady came up to us at a church function the next week, and just started talking. And she said, your son went to college with my son, and who are you, and who, whatever. And it was weird, because she was a former, because she's in administration now, but she was for years the head neuro ICU nurse in Tyler, Texas. And it's like, wow, I'd never met one of those before in my life, and here she is. And we got to talking with her about it, and she said, if anybody was gonna cut into my son's head or my husband's head, it would be Dr. Graham, the same doctor that I had already honed in on. So, it was just, again, confirmation. It was constant.
Wow. So that is a blessing, that, going to see this Dr. Graham versus trying to travel to like a New York City or London and saying, where do you get the finances to do that? So unbelievable. So now, I think we talked before, a malignant tumor, brain tumor. Well, they usually give you, for a malignant brain tumor, the doctor probably gives you saying you got like 6 months to live, maybe not even 6 months to live. And it's usually a thing. But a benign brain tumor is less toxic than a malignant brain tumor, I would assume.
In a sense, that's true. The tumor I had was not malignant. It was not a cancerous thing. And so they were able to go in. The doctor even said, the surgeon said before the surgery, based on the MRIs and CAT scans and all this stuff that was going on, he said, there are small, medium, large, extra large tumors. Yours is ginormous. He said, we almost never see them that size. And that's why it had gotten so large, it blocked the flow of the spinal fluid, and it was building up in my brain, and it was pushing my brainstem over, crushing and compressing all the nerves that run through your brainstem, just everything to do with your body. And I was losing everything essentially because all those nerves were getting compressed. But it was a benign tumor, and they said, we can go in and get it, And so that's what they did. Sometimes with malignant tumors, they can just get too deep, too big, and they just can't get them all out.
Okay, but you're still having the after effects now from that tumor removal. And there's like zero chance that they'll ever grow back or resurface?
Well, it wouldn't be accurate to say zero chance, but this tumor that I had, they said it's been growing 30 more or 40 years or more in your head. And it's very, very, very slow. And when the surgeon got it all out, he said, he thinks he couldn't get to like maybe 1%. It's just not much because it was just on too many nerves, and it would disturb those nerves to do it. But when I got the final MRI based after that surgery, the radiologist there said there's no tumor left. But the neurosurgeon said if it comes back, it'll be 30 or 40 years. You won't know it. You'll be gone. So
before,
nothing to worry about.
If you had something like that for 20 or 30 years, did you have some severe headaches?
I never, ever had a headache. Never. Never once. Even with it near the end, it never gave me the headache. That all surprised them too. Every nurse, every doctor, everywhere we went. What's the pain level in your head? Nothing. Nothing. It never bothered me.
Amazing. Amazing.
It is amazing.
Okay. So basically obviously you canceled your tour for 2022 saying we better take a year off. This isn't going to work out, of traveling the country.
Well, sort of. At first we canceled like 2 months of meetings. We thought it'd be kind of quick and whatever. But soon we realized, this is going to be a big, big deal, So yes, we had to cancel. I actually canceled blocks of meetings a couple of different times because I was not capable of doing anything. So I lost over 50 pounds also and got really weak, really skinny, really cold, really emaciated looking. And it was a big deal.
Was this surgery just like over a 1 day period, or was it?
It was just several hours, but yes, one day. And then and then a week in ICU, and then released.
Okay. Now, was there any complications that the doctor warned you about this surgery? That maybe they could, one slip up in the brain that could definitely affect your life or kill you.
Well, and the doctor said that the office visit before the surgery, he was going through this really long list. And, he said, you have about a 60% chance of living through the surgery. You may be blind, you may be deaf, you might not have any digestion, you might be on a ventilator the rest of your life, you may not be able to swallow, all kind of really devastating things. And at one point, Dana even stopped him and said, "Can you tell us anything good?" And he looked right at her and said, "No." It's like, whoa, okay, here we go. And immediately after surgery, almost everything he said and more actually had happened to me to some degree or another, but slowly everything was coming back online. Like, for instance, my breathing was extremely shallow. I mean, like almost non-existent. I couldn't swallow. I could take a sip of something or eat, whatever, the cream of wheat or whatever they give, right away, or the first meal. And but if I didn't swallow immediately, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I had to get another sip of water or something to wash it down. My palate had fallen. I couldn't talk. I could all talk about like this. I mean, that was it. I couldn't talk. My right eye was basically blind and looking off into nowhere. And I had no digestion sounds at all for 4 days, even with a stethoscope. They could hear no activity here. So everything that kind of, he said, could go wrong, did, but only a small degree, all things considered. I mean, it was a big deal, but it was neat to see different systems coming back online. It took several weeks, and even still, there's still a bit of, not necessarily official rehab, but I mean, rehabbing myself even now, because things aren't normal. It's better than it was, but it's not over yet.
Wow. So, I would assume that an experience like that would humble a person unbelievably. Like, you probably tell your wife, you love her and vice versa a zillion times a day. I'm not doubting that. But this puts you in a different perspective that your next time you say you love her might be the last time you say you love her. And I don't know, maybe you go over your will. Then again, in your case, if you're going to will, you probably have it. I'm just as, well, in my case, I got it to my sons if something happened to me, but there's nothing to really go over.
They get everything anyway, so.
So I don't know if that would be important, but I don't know. Maybe if you messed somebody over in your earlier in life, saying, "I better apologize or ask for forgiveness to so and so because I might not be here in another week or two."
Well, that's a big question there because we also have a walk in faith ministry, which, believe it or not, is a healing deliverance type ministry. And we have seen God do literally hundreds and hundreds of miraculous healings and whatnot. And one thing that is important, everybody knows the saying, you got to quit worrying like that, you give yourself an ulcer. Right? We've all heard that. We know what goes on here can affect what goes on here, going on long enough. And so the point is, it happens with more than just that. It happens with a lot of things. And when I was first diagnosed with this, because it has been so long, I mean, we're talking 40 years or more ago, that's a lot of life. And Man, we were, it wasn't just me, but we were digging through my past, finding out, did I do anything to open this door to an enemy attack of this kind of thing? We didn't know. We weren't ruling out anything. And yeah, there was a lot of soul searching and repenting and and all that kind of stuff. But even now, like I tell people, there is no guarantee at churches. When I'm talking, there is no guarantee we're all getting home today. We don't know what's going to happen when we pull out on the street, out of the parking lot, and it can be over. And so everything's important. And my time just happened to be written down in ink, scheduled. We're going to cut your head open at this time, you know. And I kind of had a preliminary that something could go wrong, but really and truly, we all live our lives that way when you think about it.
Okay. You didn't have an intensive prayer session or anything like that prior to the surgery, or it just...
Well, there were several sessions with, that kind of thing. Nothing, one big major anything, not really. There were a lot of, there was a lot that went in up to that time. I'll just say it that way.
I would like to interject something, if I may.
Absolutely.
Since we have lived on the road and in ministry for 30 years, we have trusted God for everything for 30 years, and our faith has been built every day. So we have a very firm foundation and a strong faith, and we talk to God all day long and pray all day long. I don't mean, I don't mean literally, but I mean in our head, or we're talking, we pray a lot. We don't wait till tragedy strikes or something wrong like most people do. All of a sudden something's wrong, now they're going to run to church or they're going to run to God. We already had that relationship with Him. It was already established. And that's one of the things that we tell people, build your faith before tragedy happens so that you can survive it and go through it a much better person, and a lot easier if you have that faith already established.
There was never any panic kind of feel, or I never had fear. No matter, even when that surgeon was sitting there telling me all the bad things that's going to happen to me, maybe, and she's asking this question. It's like, I didn't want to go through this. I don't want to leave this life. I don't want to leave my wife. I don't want to leave my son. I don't want to leave the ministry, but God's got it. God's got this thing. I'm not concerned about what the outcome is. I have a certain want or desire, but I'm not worried at all. And so many people have said, well, I don't know how you could go through this. And I tell her the same thing. I don't know how you could do. And it goes back to what she just said. Build your faith before something happens, because then it's a whole lot easier.
Amen. Amen.
It's a whole lot simpler.
Incredible. So I'm thinking, like in the book of Job, didn't Job God put Job through like test to test his faith and stuff like that? Has God do you feel that God has put you in, like, maybe not medically, health-wise, but I don't know, maybe with a car situation, saying, I can't afford to have my car break down, but lo and behold, your car breaks down, and saying, God, I need your help. Give me wisdom, or give me the finances to fix my car. But I guess if God never, ever put you through a challenge, you don't really know where your faith can be tested, if you're really a strong man of faith. Otherwise, I don't know.
Well, in a sense, that's true to some degree, but it still goes back to what Dana said, in a sense, because like you mentioned, whether it's the car or whether it's me or us or whatever, we just know that my whole thing was, God's got this thing, and I'm not concerned about it. And it's really the same with everything, because like she was saying, we have lived for 30 years trusting God for finances, for vehicles, for health, for everything, you know. So, I mean, it was no big deal as far as that goes. And it's hard to say it in a way that people can understand it if they're not there, because they have no basis to understand what I'm trying to say there. But the more you live for God, the more you trust God with your life, really the easier everything is. If we have a blowout, I'm not worried about it. I don't want to go through it, but
Yeah.
it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. You know?
That's a good way of looking at it. And so basically, you had this surgery done in 2022, and you took the year off from traveling your ministry at that point. Now, your ministry is pretty much, you got this website, Creation Network.
Creation Seminar.
Creationseminar.net.
Correct.
So, I mean, people still like go on there, buy your merch sometimes, or interact with you and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's good enough to like take a year off to.
That's true.
So, financially were you guys okay that in 2022 to?
We were okay. We didn't do great, but there again, God took care of us. People would send us money to help financially support during this, and people we haven't seen in years, in some cases never, but yet they found out somehow. We didn't tell them. I don't know where they got the info, but it was amazing to see not just the financial support, but just texting my wife. Constantly people would text, how you doing? How's Steve? What's the latest? Any updates? You know, they really, all over the country, people showed all kinds of love and support, and we're praying for you at our church and men's group tonight. We're going to lift you up in prayer. You know, just all kinds of things like that.
Do you, year after year, do you run the same trek? Every year? Well, I know you go from Texas, San Antonio to northern New Hampshire, and then you go from, I don't know, like Ohio, Michigan, or wherever after that. Do you run the same course, the same bunch of churches?
Not really. We have some that we go to more than others, but we've been to every state many times over, and it's always, we try to make sense of our schedule. You know, we don't want to be in Oregon one day and Illinois the next day and South Florida the next. You know, I mean,
okay.
That's not good. But while we are in an area, we try to hit the churches we know, and then, you know, make some new friends and go to some more churches. But we try to schedule churches that make sense to travel to, if that makes sense. But
no, can I? Do you no? Are you guys Pentecostal? Is that how you got associated with Sanctuary Pentecostal Church?
Right.
Okay. So do you like get in touch with Pentecostal churches in the area and ask if you could like park your recreational vehicle near their church or whatever for a day or two and share with them on your creation ministry?
Usually not a spur of the moment thing like that. Usually we're scheduled out the next year, already this year kind of thing, you know, where we're putting things together. Every now and then we stop off just because we're traveling through, but mostly not. It's all scheduled out already.
Wow. So, No, I'm saying, like, you're talking about the year in 2022 when you didn't do your trek around the country. God must bless you with good love offerings to keep your car and your vehicles maintained, and also gas mileage purchases. So that's got to help a lot.
It does, but if I'm not speaking in a church, love offering's not coming in there. So it's
Yeah.
It was thin, but there again, the people were very supportive all over the country. The church, we parked in Lufkin, Texas, actually, in the church there. We've known them for years, but we got close to several people there, and they helped quite a bit on a whole lot of different things.
Wow. So
it was quite a time.
I can imagine. When you get through with all this, do you think, like, I mean, you don't even foresee yourself retiring anytime soon?
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
And you didn't, like I said, we talk about humble yourself and, telling your wife you love her, telling your son you love him, and maybe something you never said to your son you want to say to him and stuff like that. But have you ever humbled yourself with God in the sense that you're definitely set to do the creation ministry from now till maybe till your grave time, till you meet Jesus face to face? I mean, I realize, like, in the Bible, there's a verse in the New Testament that goes something to the effect that it's God's will that every man be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. And granted, there's a lot of confusion concerning the creationism and stuff like that. Is the earth like billions and billions years old versus if it's 65,000, which would be the age of Adam if Adam was still alive? And there's still confusion, a lot of confusion on that part. And dinosaurs, did they live billions and billions of years ago? So I guess there is a need for that, but I don't know if God would call you to just stay like in the San Antonio area and just preach like all kinds of different stuff out of the Bible. The knowledge of the truth, but there's a lot more truth than just creationism type of thing.
Well, let me sum it up this way, because we used to have quite a life. I mean, we were living the American dream. We had basically anything we wanted.
So let me ask you something. Before you became this
Right.
evangelist, what was your profession?
I was a paramedic. I was also I owned a business. My wife was a commercial real estate appraiser, and we
Good
were
life.
living the American dream.
Okay.
And at night, one night at a church service, I just very clearly heard God say, I didn't hear with my ears, but I heard, I knew.
Felt it in your heart.
He said, get rid of everything you have and go on the road, live by faith. Teaching about creation, I'll take care of you. And I told my wife, now mind you, we got an airplane, we had a nice big boat, we have homes, we have land, we're living a lifestyle, And I told her we're getting rid of everything we have and we're going on the road. She didn't balk at it, but she didn't understand, because God spoke to me, not to her. And so it was and we started right away that next morning, literally that night, but that next morning, we started giving stuff away. And my point is, I have made a commitment to God to do what He called me to do, and I'm going to do that. And we're going to do that as a family. And if God were to change that and say, I want you to be a pastor, I want you to go into some other ministry, children's ministry, whatever, I believe he would make that real clear, just like this last time. And the whole time this surgery and rehab and everything was going on, it was like, we've got a life, we got a ministry, we got to get back on the road, you know. And I will say, of all the things that were troubling, we'll call it, they weren't really troubling. They were just, I didn't see anything as a problem. Everything was a challenge. And I'm going to do this till I can do this. You know, I'm gonna work at this point.
When you started 30 years ago, the first couple of years that you were doing this, you must have had a lot of challenges. The love offerings.
Beyond belief. Especially from her parents. And I was, before this ministry,
all right,
I was the greatest thing, man. I mean, well, I take care of the daughter, and I'm just have an airplane, we're just doing great. No. Wow. And then when we gave up everything, go on the road, live by faith, it's like I became, it was not good. But yeah, our first 3.5 years, we were in a Jeep pulling a snowmobile trailer with our stuff in it. And we had to sleep on the side of the road because we couldn't afford to get a room. If we needed a hotel room, I would look for one of those $15 a night places that you go crawl into bed and get in the shower, you know, with your clothes on. It's so nasty in there. You know, I mean, we couldn't afford anything. There were a lot of challenges, but we were happy because we're doing what God wants us to do.
Wow.
So it's okay.
So I think I asked you, Dana, off camera, that when this all happened, you were still with Steve gung-ho, saying, you know, we're going to stay with the ministry and we're going to carry it out in 2023. So in 2023, you started the road trek again, like a normal type thing.
Not normal, but yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the year I saw you doing your testimony at the Sanctuary Pentecostal Church. So were you doing that like as a tour versus your regular creationism testimony?
Right. Yeah, our first, I'll say, series of meetings. You know, first 3 or 4 meetings after all this had gone on was last year. We were in Lufkin, Texas, and we set up some meetings in Arizona and New Mexico. Just I-10, go straight down, you know. And because I hadn't driven the motorhome in 1 year and 2 days, which we're used to going somewhere every week for years, 30 years. That was a big deal, just going stir crazy, you know. But then we were on this testimony tour, going to every church that had any part of that stuff I was telling you about, whether it's praying for me or us or the financially or keeping in touch with my wife or whatever, and telling them personally thank you. Because a text or a card in the mail even is not really good enough. We did all that, but I wanted to go personally and tell everybody thank you for what they did, because it meant so much. It meant everything.
Wow.
It was crazy. We'd sit out at the churchyard in Lufkin where we were. We'd sit out in chairs at the back of the motorhome outside, and there's a fence. We're sitting 15, 20 feet from the fence, whatever. And these little anole lizards would walk across the top of the fence. And I'm looking at those guys and thinking, what balance? I can't even walk to the motorhome door on flat ground. And so it was a really, really big deal. And when I could actually feel like, I think we can do this now, I think we can go, we really look forward to going to every church and telling them thank you. It was important. I couldn't even do what a little lizard can do, you know. So now that I can, we're going to go say thank you.
Wow. No, I was just thinking, I know it's kind of like not even apples, oranges, it's more like grapes and coconuts. But Donald Trump's situation, well, regardless of how you feel about the presidential thing right now, but when Donald Trump, I mean, he came like a millimeter from being killed by a bullet. Right. And I'm just wondering how Melania, his wife, must feel, saying, do you really, really, really want to become president? And, you know, he's a multi-billionaire. He can make like $100 zillion in real estate easily, or make a lot of money, not $100 zillion, but make enough money for conceivable. But for some reason, he wants to do it. And I assume for some reason, Melania is going along with him. And I'm looking at you, Dana, and saying that, you know, 30 years is plenty. I mean, I gave 37 years to the Postal Service, U.S. Postal Service, and I've had enough. Now I'm enjoying my retirement. But, you know, maybe not selfish, but shouldn't you guys enjoy your retirement too? After 30 plus years of ministry? I don't know.
Well, let me say something, then you could say something
okay.
there. But one thing I'll say we did from the very start is we never made our life totally only about the ministry. And what I mean by that is we travel everywhere. Like I said, we've been to every state many times over. And everywhere has got some really amazing stuff. I mean, awesome stuff. Whether it's historical, whether it's exciting outdoor stuff, whether it is hiking trails, whether it's the biggest ball of twine. You know, I mean, there's something neat at just about everywhere. And we have always taken family time to go and see things while we are in an area. So as far as retirement, as far as not doing whatever it is that somebody used to do, I don't feel a real need for that, in that as long as I'm strong enough and healthy enough to continue on, because we do see a bunch of this stuff all along the way.
You're killing two birds with one stone. That's a good way of...
Right. Not neglecting either one, but just enjoying both. It's sort of like when our son was born, I told my wife, he's coming into our life. We're not going into his. And what I meant by that, not to be rude, I didn't mean it that way at all, but yet, if we're going somewhere, he's going somewhere. He's going with us. I mean, we're not going to drop him off at somewhere. We're not going to change our whole life because the baby's sleeping. I used to vacuum the floors with a little papoose with him sleeping in it to make noise so he could sleep through it. And he would do it. He did it. He can sleep anywhere now. But anyway, go ahead. You want to add something?
Oh.
Well, we just enjoy the traveling. We have been able to do what most people hope to do when they retire.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And the Lord knew that I had enough gypsy in me, for the loose way to define that, to want to go. I've always wanted to travel and to enjoy that. And most evangelists do quit after 5, 7, 10 years. You don't hear evangelists doing this for 30 years, but it's because it has become our lifestyle and we enjoy it. And creation is a different aspect of the Bible that not very many people teach on. And it's essential, it's critical, it's where God starts his word with. So it's obviously important to him for people to understand that in the beginning, God. And so we feel a huge responsibility because very few people are speaking on this topic. And we see how children and adults are being affected by evolution. And this is so important and critical. And we knew that if God was not going to take Steve out, then if he was going to allow him to live, then he was to live to continue on the ministry. And when he mentioned his palate had fallen, he has a strong voice and he's a public speaker, yet he was talking, as he was showing a while ago, And I was like, Steve Grohman, talk, because it was very frustrating him doing that, talking like this. And at one of the doctors that we were at, I said, that isn't his voice. Am I being mean to him? Because I was always trying to encourage him and push him to get back on track.
Yeah.
And so she looked at his mouth and she said, well, his palate has fallen on that side, so it's harder for him to form. She says, stay on him, but no, you're not necessarily being mean, but just stay on him because it will come back, but he needs to reconnect a lot of his eye-hand coordination, and a lot of those connections need to be remade. And what was so interesting is that one of his testimony services giving on our Thankful Tour, one of his facial reanimation, well, not facial reanimation, his facial therapist, she attended, and she saw a picture. He posted a picture of our family. She goes, oh, that's what he looks like. That's what he's supposed to look like. She had never seen him without the facial paralysis. And then another time, as his voice came back online, we went to this woman that ended up being a primary care physician, because for some reason everybody has to have a primary care physician, which we never had before. And she's a wonderful woman. And we went to her office one of the times just as a follow-up. She goes, his voice, I can't get over his voice, because he did not have his voice anymore for so long, but it was coming back online. And it was funny because she walked out of the room and you could hear her going down the hall, his voice, I can't get over his voice. And as he's mentioned, everything has been a challenge for him to recover, but we have felt that he has to. He has a job to do. And when he was laying on the couch and couldn't walk from the couch to the bathroom, or the bed to the couch, or the bed to the bathroom, I had to literally help him. People would be texting and asking questions, and I'd have to go, Steve Grohman, people need you. You've got to get back on your feet. They need to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
And so it was an encouragement, not only people checking, people asking, how am I doing? Because a lot of times the caregiver is forgotten about in this. As you were mentioning Melania, I can't imagine what's going through her mind. Her lifestyle's a little bit different than mine, but I'm sure she loves her husband, and that's a horrifying thing to go through. And is it worth it? But she knows that that's what's driving him, and she knows that that is what he is. And I know that Steve Grohman is a teacher of creation. So you can't separate the man from his identity and from what his passion is and what his love is and what he's been driven by God to do. So I presume that she's going to support that, just like I supported Steve to return to what he is supposed to do. And I have to admit, selfishly, I wanted to get back on the road because I'm the one who likes to go. And it was very difficult to, quote, be like a normal person and go to the same church 3 times a week and see the same people and just be in the same town and go to the same Walmart and the same Home Depot, things that so many people do as a normal life. We didn't live a normal life.
Yeah.
So it was very strange to live. And I would say to myself, so this is what normal people do. It's like, that's not what we did, but they can't do what we do. And we can do what they won't do. And so we had to do it, and we want to do it, and we enjoy it. Wow. And we're still continuing our Thankful Tour. It's not over. We're heading to the Midwest. You mentioned going to Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio and Michigan.
Yeah. That's still part of it, because we haven't hit all those places in the country. But the Midwest and the middle section, there's still a few more people we need to reach.
Okay, a couple more questions I definitely want to get in. We talked about therapy, but did your neurologist recommend any food supplements or prevision? Is your memory, first of all, as good? Short-term memory is perfect?
Good. Never affected my memory at all. It was just the motor skills.
The motor
mainly.
skills.
Even everything. It was like digestion and breathing, and it was just a nerve issue.
So Prevision or cod liver oil wouldn't necessarily help motor skills in the brain. I think that helps. It's supposed to help memory, or keep you from getting Alzheimer's. But I don't know how effective it would be. If you're going to get Alzheimer's, you're going to get Alzheimer's. From what they say.
I understand your question there, but I took an enormous amount of health foods and supplements and whatnot because my nerves were damaged and they needed to repair. And the brain, when the tumor pushed the brainstem over, once the tumor is gone, that brainstem has to come back. And there was a lot of nerves that had to heal. So yes, I definitely had a lot. The doctor didn't recommend any, well, the neurosurgeon did not recommend anything, but like the primary physician did. And in fact, she has a hyperbaric chamber and I went in 60 times, 60. And
that helped you with your motor skills?
It had to help with everything, quite frankly.
Oh.
Frankly speaking.
Frankly speaking.
It had
Okay.
to.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so the hyperbolic chamber helped you, but the supplements, not necessarily.
I don't know if anything did or didn't, but all I know is things are coming back online, so let's keep it up. You know?
Oh, there you go.
Let me give you a little example.
Yeah.
During all of this, I broke my shoulder earlier on, and I went into the hyperbaric chamber, and it definitely helped me. I love going in the hyperbaric chamber. I would go in one every day if I could afford it, had access to one. He had so much wrong with him and so many issues that he couldn't tell directly because there wasn't anything specific. It was more an overall correction of issues where I needed to, I could tell if it was doing and helping my shoulder because this was the only thing I had wrong with me. Where he had so many different issues that were going on that needed correcting. We couldn't pinpoint what it was doing, but there's no doubt that it helped him out tremendously, as did the supplements.
Wow. Another question I want to get in. You had mentioned like you have a 30-year minute. Well, you've been doing this approximately 30 years, trekking the country. Do you feel that God has provided through scripture and stuff like that, new material, new stuff to present to these churches, like a church like Sanctuary Pentecostal Church? If you go at them at 30 years in a row, do you bring something new to the table every single year? Or do you kind of rehash? Because you got like the dinosaurs, the age of the earth, whether it's billions of years or 65,000 years, like Adam and Eve, or let's see, Noah's Ark. How did, the dinosaurs not eat up all the other animals on Noah's Ark? I mean, is there something new you feel that God, through inspiration, is teaching you about creation? Or do you have to kind of repackage it? Kind of
yes. The answer to your question is yes. There are new things all the time, new discoveries or new understandings,
fossils and bones of different
new fossils that are found, all kind of new stuff. But even at that, I have only like maybe 4 opportunities at a week to speak to a church, and like for instance, we have 12 lessons. Well, that's 3 years then, just in that in itself, much less adding new things. So there's always new material to present, no matter what. Oftentimes they want me to present such and such because they got a whole lot of new people, and that's what they were asking the question about. So they there is some repeat, but usually like at a church service, I always leave time for question and answer time because I want to know, I can't get to everything. There's just too much. What are you thinking about? What are you struggling with? What are you trying to talk to somebody about and they don't get? And another way, now you want a way to handle it or whatever. And we have some amazing questions come up, and I enjoy that. I enjoy question and answer time.
So anywho, my producer here told me that we have, just under 3 minutes left here in the episode. So you've been making excellent on time. Well, I know when I heard you last year giving your testimony about your brain tumor, I believe you talked a little more than an hour. So
Correct.
this is kind of the Crypt Notes version of it,
Right.
of the thing.
But this was fun. This was good.
Okay, so is there anything in the last 2 minutes or so that anything that we talked about you'd like to elaborate on, or something we did not talk about which you'd like to bring up at this time?
Well,
Or Dana, if you'd like to chime in.
I do
with,
want to chime in
Yeah, I was
on
gonna-
one thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
One major thing.
Sure.
Not to correct you, but it's 6,500 years, not 65,000 years, that we believe is when creation was. And
Oh, you're right. Okay.
okay, I just want to make that clear because I don't want people to think that we think it's 65,000, because that's not what we believe. We believe
Okay.
more the 6,000 year creation time frame.
And Adam and Eve would be 6,500 years old, approximately.
Yes.
And you know what's amazing? In John 5:46 and 7, Jesus said, if you don't believe Moses, you can't believe him. He says, you can't believe me. Moses wrote Genesis. So what is written in Genesis is extremely important according to Jesus.
And one of the things that Steve has amended and changed a little bit about is, you mentioned dinosaurs a lot. We talk about how space, we call it, is the new dinosaurs, because space and cosmology has become so prevalent, and that is what is being used now much more than dinosaurs, to draw people away from a strict creation viewpoint. So he does a lot more on those topics, the whole astronomy, cosmology issues, and pointing out what these famous people actually say sometimes behind the scenes. And so it's very interesting because most people believe whatever they say is the truth. And we need to be careful of that, just like any other avenue of science that is tainted by evolution.
Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, if this episode has been a blessing to you, please log on to creationseminar.net.
Right.
Or the YouTube, if everybody's on YouTube, Steve Grohman, go on, type in Steve Grohman at YouTube, or your YouTube channel is
Unclassic Road Trip.
Unclassic Road Trip, and YouTube's thing. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please join us again for another episode of Frankly Speaking. Thank you.